Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Franz, Sidney. So, welcome so happily today for a wonderful sunny day here in Wyoming, and with an amazing guest all the way from California. And he's going to talk about empty nest syndrome and problems that we have when our children grow up and leave a house. Or sometimes this doesn't happen. There are tragedies. There is divorce, there is death, there is chronic disease, there is military service. Whatever happens in our life that makes a parent find out in the morning and then wake up and the house is empty. There is no sound. And they have all this free time. And we call this the empty nest stage in our life that can happen to most people. And I thought I would seek for an expert in this. And so because of that, we have today Anthony Damaschino, all the way from California. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Franz. I'm excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and I'm very excited. Just tell me how you pronounce the surname, not that you are American and no more Italian.
Well, I do like the Damaschino. It sounds more official, but in the US, it's Damaschino. So
all Italians were laughing like, what the heck is that?
yeah,
But,
I'd rather be Antonio Damaschino, I guess. It does sound much more romantic, if you will.
Okay, I'll be calling you Antonio. So that's great. So, well, let's define for people who are not aware of this. What is this empty nest stage in our life? What happens?
Yeah, so the empty nest transition for most people happens, most parents, of course, happens between the ages of 45 and 55 years old or 58 years old. Usually a parent has one or more children, or a couple has one or more children. Those children leave the house, and it's a big shift for most people, right? They've been accustomed, they've been actively parenting for the last 2 decades. And as you mentioned in the intro, it's exciting because you feel like you'll have this house to yourself and there'll be peace and quiet, but it doesn't always go that way for some. So there's a lot of struggles. There's empty nest syndrome. There's some other things associated with that, which is a transition for all of us.
Yeah. So it is weird that if you think about it, you have pregnancy books and bereavement books and widows grief books, but there's nothing about empty syndrome, empty nests.
It's true, Franz. For me, let me define empty nest syndrome, if you will, if you don't mind. Empty nest syndrome is the loss or the feelings of loss or grief or sadness when children leave the home. And so, again, a lot of people joke about it. What are you going to do with your child's room? Are you going to turn it into a gym? Are you going to get your yoga studio that you always wanted? But in actuality, again, 2 decades of active parenting, there's a lot of emotions involved. You are involved in their daily lives. You're a chauffeur, you're a cook, you're a personal organizer. And many people identify with themselves as a parent, a stay-at-home mom. I'm the water polo coach. I'm the room mom. And when the child leaves, there can be that void in one's identity, right? And feelings of, what's my purpose now? I'm no longer an active parent. I'm no longer, that stay-at-home mom or that coach. So I think losing that identity and trying to redefine yourself and figure out what's next is very hard, especially in a hyper-connected world, Franz, that we know we live in, with phones and social media and portals into our children's schools. So, we are very active and very in tuned through electronics with our kids. And once they leave, there's a void there. And a lot of people struggle with empty nest syndrome, again, those feelings of loss and grief when their children leave.
So is there something that you went through when your own children went?
Yeah. So I apologize for not answering your last question. So I did go through this. I'm going to loop back around. When I started thinking about my empty nest journey, I did what you just said. I went to the library. I looked online. There wasn't a girlfriend's guide to pregnancy. There wasn't a what to expect when you're expecting. There were books on divorce. There were books on retirement. There were books on having children, but nothing really that hit the empty nest stage, right? That transition. And so for me, I started looking into it more and more, which resulted in me writing the book. But what I saw with friends and peers who were just a few years older than me, my older son went off to college. I had two daughters still in high school. And I was noticing that there were more divorces happening. And I think the divorces that were going on was the biggest shocking thing to me, because I couldn't imagine being married to someone for 25 years, 20 or 25 years, and then divorcing someone. I get it after 3, or maybe it's not working out after 7, but 20 years of marriage and you've raised a family, and then boom, your marriage is over. And it seemed to coordinate when children were leaving the house. So my initial fear, when I started noticing that more and more, it was more curiosity. What's happening, right? Why are these couples leaving each other after being together for 20 years and raising children? They've almost done everything they've set out to do as a family. Their children are launched, and now something's amiss.
That is a problem, I guess. And I mentioned this before, so those who heard me talking will know this, but there are so many things that happen. One is because it's a phase of your life. So you finished raising your children, and now what about me? So you might think, what is my purpose? You might not have a purpose. Another thing, it could be you have become a stranger. So you are so busy and focused, perhaps too much. Is that it too much? Raising your kids and doing everything for them. So you were in the homeschooling groups, you were in the college university parents group, in the cheerleader group, and now it's gone. So you don't know where to belong, and you don't want to go straight into the pensioners group.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And also because in some occasions, the woman especially has been enduring for the sake of the children a really difficult marriage with a person that maybe was not compatible, maybe was alcoholic or whatever. And so when the children go, she's like, oh, I can now get a life that I want.
Yeah, 64% of divorces for couples over 50 are initiated by the woman. And that's of course in a conventional marriage. But it is a time where a lot is going on, right? And menopause is going on, career plateauing, worried about finances for retirement, how your parents are doing. Do they need your help? Do your children need your help? There's a lot going on with empty nesters. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, Franz. It is that drift that a couple can have over the course of their marriage. And a crazy thing, if you think about it. So out of all the people, you marry this person, you love them, you're married to them, but out of all the people you can deprioritize, it's your spouse. You can't deprioritize your job. You have to get your job done or you'll be fired. You can't not feed your children. You can't not look after your children. So all of the things you are doing, you are focusing on your children, you're focusing on your career, your job, your life, your parents' health, your own health. The one person who will forgive you or who you feel like you can deprioritize is your spouse. But when that becomes a pattern for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, or throughout a marriage, it does stand to reason that it's exactly what you said. After 10, 15 years, do I even know this stranger? Do I love this stranger? Do I want to be with this person anymore? And I think it's a time of reflection, which makes some marriages vulnerable to that reflection.
Yes. Also because people change, especially
Absolutely.
If you get married very young. People are changing. We are evolving. What we think is very exciting when we're 20, it might not sound very exciting when we're 30 and 40. Like, for example, when I was 18, I was a DJ. My biggest thing was, as soon as I have a money, I'm going to have a huge hi-fi. Nobody will know what is a hi-fi. It's a high fidelity system with a record player and a
Yeah.
Pioneer speakers. And I really wanted to have that and put it all in my bedroom or whatever. And by the time I was rich enough to afford it, I couldn't care less about it. So, all my efforts to get this hi-fi, So I
Yeah.
guess this is what happens when you're young. You have special dreams. I want to tour the world and this and that. And then you reach 30, 40, we're like, oh, maybe I would just like to stop my hair loss or to stop the stomach aches or to stop cancer. So your priorities change completely. And
They
then
do.
your spouse might be much healthier than you or much sicker than you, or it might
Yes.
start university and you're like, my gosh, and I'm here stuck in the home. So there are all these friction problems Sunday. So, but you found the solution. How?
So I broke empty nest syndrome, which is not a clinical diagnosis, but I broke that down into 5 parts. And in the book, I talk about the parts of empty nest syndrome and then some solutions to empty nest syndrome. But I think more importantly, in the book, I hit what I call the 4 Ds, and that is depression, disownment, divorce, and drift. Now, we've already talked about drift, like just disconnecting in your marriage over a period of time. And then divorce obviously can happen as a result of that. Depression is when, you are in a situation that you are unhappy, obviously. And there's situational depression, which may occur when your child leaves and you're sad. Or there could be clinical depression, which over a long period of time, you're not able to get over that. And, mental health is an issue in the United States. It's an issue in the world today. A lot of people are not in that happy mental state. And when a lot of things are changing and you're going through a transition, it's even worse. Now, a weird sidebar one, I guess we'll call it the second D, which was, oh gosh, what did I say it was? It's just totally slipped my mind. So it is the situation where disownment, excuse me. It's a situation where 1 in 4 families in the United States, someone is estranged from another family member. And the last thing, Franz, that you and I would ever want to happen is you raise a child, you send that child out of your home, and now that child is in charge of your relationship. They cannot call you. They cannot return your texts. They can walk away from you because they are no longer physically in your domain, so to speak. So it's a very scary situation, I think, with disownment. If there's underlying issues or brothers and sisters don't get along or parents and children don't have that connection or there's stress in those relationships, it's a very, scary thing that can happen to a family. I think divorce is probably the worst. Drift is a natural thing that happens. And in my book, I talk about combating each of those, which I'm happy to quickly go over if you want. But how do you reconnect with your spouse? How do you develop a communication and a stronger parent-child to parent-adult relationship with your children? And how do you take care of yourself? How do you look after yourself, do the things you wanted to do, get that hi-fi stereo if at 50 you feel like you want to do that again? So there's a lot there to unpack, but yes, there's a lot facing empty nesters, and I think there's some tools and techniques we can use to help ourselves out of it.
So is your book a guide, a step-by-step guide that will help a person or a couple to walk through a certain path to find out where the gaps are so they can work on them?
Yeah, so when I talk about it's a nonfiction, it is a self-help book, but it's really I expect the reader to go on a journey through the 17 chapters. First, I want them to kind of understand what empty nesting is, understand empty nesting today, understand finances and pressures and all the things they're dealing with, empty nesters are dealing with. Then we move into looking at one's past, looking at their parents, their parenting style, their relationship with their children. So there's exercises around understanding their past. Then look at their relationship in my book, The Empty Nest Blueprint. That's more couple focused. So it's looking at the relationship. Franz, when you and I were dating, what did we like to do? What were the fun things we did early in our engagement years? Then what did we do when we had children? And now that our children are out, what do you and I want to do together again, right? What fun do we want to bring back into the relationship? Because we've been stuck in a routine. So it's really, there are exercises throughout. There are answers and solutions. And again, I talk about empty nest syndrome, and I talk about the 4Ds and how to combat those. But I feel like it's more of a journey through looking at the past, understanding the present, and then planning for your future. And the book ends with 4 plans. So a plan for you, a plan for your relationship with your child, a plan for your spouse, and a plan for your marriage. And this isn't something, Fran, that you're building and you're handing to your child and you're handing to your spouse, and you and your spouse are sitting down and saying, this is my plan for my marriage. These are the actions, activities, physical actions, emotional actions, things you are going to do to have a better relationship with your child, things you are going to do for yourself, things you are going to do for your spouse, and things you are going to do in your marriage. So it is, you are the one that is taking control and ownership of that plan. Should you discuss it with your children and your spouse? Sure, yes. But in the most part, this is a mind switch for you to do. Does that make sense?
Yes, I was thinking that's important to structure what's going on, go back to the root of the issues. Why are we in this situation? What's going on? In some cases, there will be a need for coaching, for therapy, because there are some very stuck beliefs. I only see myself in this way, and so I can't move forward. In other times, we just read a book, self-help, go on YouTube, ask friends. There are lots of courses locally. Also, mindfulness is very useful.
Yeah.
And I'm interviewing somebody next week, Anne-Marie, and she is in New Mexico, and she has seen a huge amount of improvement in the family dynamics by introducing mindfulness activities in the schools for children who were hyperactive, they were bullies, etc.
Yeah.
And in families where the connection wasn't great. And once you introduce this aspect of actually being together, breathing together, be calm together, things shifted so much. And I'm quite sure that mindfulness, as a hypnotherapist myself and NLP coach, is a main thing. So when we have spent 20 to 35, we're running all the time because we have kids, we have jobs. When we start to change and shift our priorities, and we might realize that running all the time isn't that important, because as people will be so tired of hearing this, but nobody in their deathbed ever regretted not spending enough time in the office. Yes. Or on the golf course. They will say, my relationships. And yes. Other people say, I never had fun. So it is time to really focus on what we're building today. Is like a brick building, and these bricks have to be nice and solid. And if you base it all on career, I know in the US there's a huge push to be successful, to earn a lot of money, but then the level of happiness doesn't always correspond to the amount of money and success.
Right. Just imagine the surprise of, I've stayed together for the kids the last 20 years. I want out. That would just be a complete shock. And what's different today, Franz, than it was in our parents' generation or the generation before that is, if you are 45 to 55, the chances are you're going to live another 30 years, 30 plus years. So, people retired at 65, they died at 75 in, generations back. Now you're 55, your children have left the house, you're looking at this other person from across the table. Do I want to spend another 30 years with this person, right? Are we aligned? Are we connected? Are we still having fun? Do we have the same interests? All of those things that you're talking about. And I think there are ways to try and find those things and make that connection. And I'm not against divorce. I'm not against therapy. If it is right for some people, then it is right for some people. But I think to go through a transition, any transition in life, and not be aware of that transition and not being aware of what's happening to you, I think it's a shame, because I think you leave yourself open to things that you can proactively get in front of. You wouldn't just mindlessly not think about retirement, or mindlessly not think about your career, or your spouse when you got married. These are things you planned for. These are things you continue to plan for. So why wouldn't you plan for your empty nest stage in life?
Yes, planning. But was something I heard years ago in my church, and they said, planning. No, wait, it was failing to plan is
Is
planning to
planning
fail.
to fail. Yes.
Wasn't that from, I don't know if it was Boy Scouts or something? I'm not sure I
Yeah.
remember, but it made me really think, yeah, if you haven't planned it, how a goal not written down is merely a wish, one of my favorite quotes.
Yes.
If you have not worked on the goal to nourish the relationship throughout the turbulent times and you're a parent, how is that gonna go? And I'm very aware because I'm divorced as well. So I know that, we all carry our faults, and sometimes it's one spouse, sometimes it's both. Sometimes there are so many tragedies in life, and we have to stick together. I think that's a huge difference. Maybe 50 years ago, up to when people would just stick together despite problems. And now we tend to kind of casually just walk out because there is a problem. So our ability to cope with problems isn't based on resilience nowadays. Like the
Yeah.
first thing we just flick off and we go and we get married over and over and over. But I think if we don't fix the initial root cause of the issue, we're gonna go back to the same issue. If we're spending too much time doing one thing and ignoring the spouse, the time will come when the spouse says, I'm gone out of here because I don't exist. And
Yeah.
as an empty nester, this is probably a great experience for you to know you can have a happy marriage and even a better marriage after your 40s and 50s.
It is true. I think, I realized that I was taking my spouse for granted in many ways. Um, and I think as well, I tell a story in the book that, she would come home. She's a school teacher. She would come home after a hard week at work. All she wants to do is be with adults and have an adult conversation. I'm in human resources. All I do is talk to adults for 5 days a week, 20 hours a day, it seems like. So I come home, all I want to do is not talk to adults. So there was a constant tension between us. What are we going to do on Friday night? I want to stay in and watch a movie. She wants to go out and have fun. And year after year, or month after month, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, I would win that argument, right? That the lazy person that refuses to go out is going to win that argument. And I realized one night when she was disappointed in, let's just stay home tonight, and I saw it on her face, and I saw all of the other Friday nights on her face all at once. And I thought to myself, I need to shift my way of thinking. I need to rally, go out and have fun, make Friday night a priority with my wife, because it's a good example of drift. Because if I continue down that path, what other things in our life and in our marriage is she disappointed or sad about or upset, right? What other things in our marriage am I holding back or pulling back or not engaging with her? So that moment made me shift, at least looking into this. And then you're right. Then it's been, a constant, I think, a job ever since, but a job I love doing, right? So I love re-engaging and focusing on myself more, on my relationship with my children, but also on my spouse and our marriage.
That's brilliant. And I'm so glad it went well with you. In other occasions, the spouse gets tired of being ignored or neglected in their personal needs, and they find somebody else and then they go. Or they have a totally separate life, as I know from some of my friends back in England, where they are in the same house, they sleep in different rooms, they have their own friends. I don't know if they're like roommates or something.
Roommates, yeah.
They haven't been intimate for years. You can tell they don't kiss, they don't hug, they don't stay close. So they're just together because, but there is nothing there. the spark, and you know, there's no point there in thinking if I divorce, I'm going to have a spark. Well, the same amount of work you're going to put in the new marriage, you can put it in your marriage. You know, it's still work. And if you refuse to do it in this marriage, you will refuse to do it in the new marriage. So might as
Right.
well, when it's possible, when it's healthy for both, to stick to your spouse and actually make the effort from a day you're married to say, right, let's have fun together. Let's do something that we like. Doesn't matter if you just walk around the block and you love doing it, just do that. Because I love when you see these Italian couples in the Riviera, in the Loano area, Genova, in Liguria, yeah, which is near the Nizza
Yeah.
and all this. And you see them, they're pensioners, they're walking hand in hand in December. That's the cheap season to go to Liguria, because otherwise you're paying thousands. And they're walking there, there's a pale sunshine there. It's not very cold. It's like we're California, right, from Milan. And they're walking and they're holding on another. You think, oh my gosh, I hope I'm just going to be just like them when I'm 80, because they are so sweet, you know, and they're
Yeah.
having the greatest time there together, just looking at the lovely sunsets and walking the parks. And oh, it's such a great image to see them together. And I think it's a great example for the children to know that relationships can last and can be good in different stages of life. So we do have a couple more minutes, and there will be, well, 5 minutes. Would be lovely to have your tips.
Sure. So one thing I ask, so I just quickly, I have a book, again, the Empty Nest Blueprint is more couple focused. And when I wrote it, all writers need to make a decision of what you're going to include and what you're not going to include. And I felt like when I was writing the first book that I had to exclude single parents. So I just want to say that I want to throw in a few tips for single parents who are raising children on their own, and who have raised children on their own. And then when they go through an empty nest situation, Franz, as you can imagine, they don't have the support of a spouse or someone next to them. They are losing their entire world and focus, right? They are a roommate or roommates with their children leave, they are alone. So in many ways, I think it's harder and more difficult for a single parent to go through this transition. So I'll start with the single parent. The beauty that a single parent has when their child leaves is time, right? All of the time they've dedicated to raising a child and being this child's point for everything is now their own time. So I go through and I surveyed, over 100 single parents. I had many interviews, and, taking care of oneself, focusing on the individual, focusing on their career, their interests, their friendships, their families, reconnecting with people that they haven't had time for in the past, reconnecting with their passions. Instead of being a chauffeur and a cook, they can cook for fun and sit on the couch and read on a weekend, whatever those things are. So time is the great value that a single empty nester gets. Both empty nesters get that, married and single. But what is a single person going to do with their time? And so through the book, I asked them to step back and kind of think about their priorities and their children's priorities. Again, build a plan for them and their children, build a plan for themselves, and then move forward with that plan. So for the single empty nester, for all empty nesters, become empty nest aware that this transition is happening to you. And for the single person, sit down, think through the transition, what you want in the future, what you've put off, prioritize yourself and go after it is basically a good summary of the single book. For a couple, I ask about 2/3 into the book for the reader to make a decision that they want to re-engage with their spouse. They're going to recommit to their marriage, and they're going to commit to emotional actions and physical actions to support their spouse. So emotional actions could be everything from romantic gestures to thanking them for, here, let's have dinner. Thank you very much for dinner. I'm getting up to get a cup of coffee. Would you like a cup of coffee? Just those little things that couples can drift from doing. So being a lot more aware of emotional actions and physical actions that they can do for their spouse. And then, of course, the other tip is to have open communication and set expectations with their children. So when a child leaves the house, there are expectations the child has of the parent and expectations the parent has of the child, whether that's grades or finances or career decisions or being safe or not using drugs. What all of those expectations, I advise parents to have conversations with their children, listen to their children, listen to what their children's expectations are, so that when they move away, there's some agreement with that relationship, and that you can continue to touch base coming from the same space than being surprised or upset or letting something, take that relationship and again, push it off kilter, so to speak. So those are just a few things, but I think from a high level, connect, listen, become empty nest aware.
That's great advice. And I have to take notes so I can do that myself. We are not empty nesters yet. We still have one at home. Yay. So the day will come. But, I've already in that stage because being divorced, I had to rethink my life as a single mom of 2 kids and really see what is my potential. And it's been a huge shift in my mindset. And this is how I trained to become a coach, because I realized, wow, I want to help people as well to design the life they want. And that's why I have a whole podcast. Why is it called Create with Franz? It started more in a creative, artistic way, but really is to help people to design the life that they want. And how do we design it? We have to see what's working, what's not working, and what's the vision. What do we want in 10 years, in 20 years? So that's why we have all these, we are like 213 episodes, 4 years going, and in 9 years of broadcasting. And that's the whole point, is to get people to get off a chair and take action, and don't be a victim, be a victor, because the power that we have with our mind to make decision is great. And with our mindset, we can really change our life completely.
I agree. I love that. I mean, I think, your goal, as a coach and as a podcaster, and hopefully this podcast, is to help people, right? Yeah. And
like you.
You don't write a book to make a ton of money. This isn't Harry Potter. You write a book because you feel like you have something, at least in my case, because I felt like I had something to share. I did the research and I just want to help people. So that, the Amazon review or whatever that says, I really like this book and it helped me have a great conversation with my child. Exactly. That is worth much more than the dollars and cents royalty you get on, selling a book.
There's nothing, just knowing that you change one life, that somebody had a better day, it's like, it's worth it. It's all the effort to make sure that somebody has a smile because you made the effort, made months and months of research, and they listen to that. And now they're like, wow, it's just having the vision, isn't it, Anthony? Just knowing that change is possible. Some people think it's impossible, but everything is possible if you set your heart to it. So that's my view.
I love that. Yes.
Right. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciated all your description and what happens, and a very thorough description, and also your very structured help. So I'm quite sure that people listening to us will find this interview very useful. So thank you so much, Anthony Damaschino, with his book on empty nesting. One just came out on June 18. The other one was a bit older than that. So both very good books. Find them. We will put the andredamaschino.com all the links below. I'm not endorsing the book, but it looks to me like it's a great book, So you're going to have to check it out and maybe write a review, one for a podcast, because it's a great podcast. And if it helps you, you're going to tell us and help us to grow the show, and one for this amazing book, for the effort that Anthony has made, so that you also can have a great empty nester syndrome reset and get a second part of life from 50 to 100, hopefully, that is as shiny as when you were 20. Maybe you are not the same. You might have a couple of wrinkles, But life can be even happier once the children become adults. If you manage that homeostasis, that harmony in the family, they don't live with you, but you can see them as adults and treat them differently, and being an adult that is happy, that sounds very good to me. Yeah, it's a very good goal. So thank you for being in the show, Anthony.
Thank you for having me. It was great. Appreciate it.
So guys, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you will be saving this episode and sending to all your friends, and head on to carry the book and have a look and see, check it out in the library and then buy it. Do whatever you want, but make sure you learn how to avoid this bad syndrome and how to emerge victorious. So thank you so much, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.